Hello, everyone, and welcome. There's already a really good crowd here. Thank you for joining us for our Bolivia Zoom. My name is Julie Fannin. I'm one of the owners of Naturalist Journeys, and we have Greg Butcher here, along with our local guide Hugo, who will be our guide for the group in Bolivia. And Greg will join with seven more, I believe, right, Greg? So tonight, without getting into too many details, let's just a few housekeeping items. Please keep yourselves muted. And if you have any questions, put them in the chat and we'll go over them all at the end. So I'll hand it off to you, Greg.
Hi, everybody. I am very excited to be talking to you all here. Hugo and I did this tour 2 years ago and had a wonderful time at it. And so we're having this Zoom tonight to try to get everyone excited so we can go ahead and do it again this fall. You can see Hugo here is Hugo SC. And to give you a little background, about 4 years ago, Hugo and I were both doing a tour in Tranquilo Bay in Panama, which is another fun tour that Naturalist Journeys does. And I found out early on that Hugo was from Bolivia. And I had always wanted to go to Bolivia, had never been there. And I was excited because I'd worked with a conservation group there called Association Armenia. And I've been hearing great things from the people who work for that association for years. And so when I found out Hugo was from Bolivia, I said, we got to make a tour happen. So he and I gathered a couple of people to help us figure out how to do the tour. And we did it 2 years ago and had a wonderful time. People saw a lot of birds, and that's why we hope to do it again. And so the first question you should have is, why should we go to Bolivia? And actually, that's what the whole evening is about. Well, there's the chat. Julie's done the chat. So if you have questions, put down the chat. And Julie, feel free to interrupt me if a question should be answered right away, and otherwise we'll get to questions after I give a PowerPoint presentation. So one of the good reasons to go to Bolivia is here. Bolivia has an absolutely wonderful bird book. It's only about 7 years old, and it's one of the best bird books for any country in Latin America. And so whether you go or not, you can read the bird book and learn tons about the birds of Bolivia. Sebastian Herzog is the lead author, and he's a really good guy. I've had a chance to meet him a couple of times, and he's done a wonderful job with all his colleagues in producing this bird book. The other thing I ran into a couple of years ago, getting ready for the first tour, was this Bolivia Reader, History, Culture, and Politics of Bolivia. And it's just got a tremendous amount of information about all three of those topics. And it's just a really fun country to learn about. And this is a great way to learn about history, culture, and politics, where the other book is a great way to learn about the birds. So without further ado, I will move to try to share my screen and show you a PowerPoint that I put together. Okay, so the sign on top of the middle is welcome in many languages, and there are several languages being spoken in Bolivia, mostly Spanish, of course. And we have some birds to show you. So there's plush-crested jay on the upper right. We have a guira cuckoo, one of the craziest birds we see in Bolivia, on the lower right, and a narrow-billed wood creeper in the middle. And I am not a bird photographer. And the reason I'm not a bird photographer is because every tour we take has at least one fabulous bird photographer. Most of them have several. And so I was able to use the photos made by Emily Nelson on our tour 2 years ago. So thank Emily for these wonderful photos. So this is Bolivia, and we'll start with the map on the right. You can see that the longest border of Bolivia is with Brazil. Then to the left is Peru. Then below is Chile. To the right of that is Argentina. And then there's also a long border with Paraguay. Unfortunately for Bolivia, they've lost part of their territory to almost all these countries, with the most tragic loss being, if you look at the green part of Bolivia, they used to have a coastal route through part of what is now Chile. And they lost the war with Chile, so that's why that Bolivia is one of the two landlocked countries in South America, the other one being Paraguay. And Bolivia also lost a war to Paraguay, so some of that green stuff got kicked out and now belongs to Paraguay. If you move to the map on the left, you can see almost in the center the big type Santa Cruz. And that Santa Cruz is a department, and we won't see most of the department. We'll be going to Santa Cruz, the city, which is in smaller type, lower end to the left of Santa Cruz, the department. And Bolivia is a pretty good sized country, nowhere near the biggest, but you can see it's about the same size as Colombia. Um, but the reason this tour is so effective is because we're able to see a huge chunk of the birds of Bolivia just by taking the short route from Santa Cruz and then going straight left to Cochabamba, straight left a little bit up going to La Paz for the extension. And then the extension will go a little bit north of La Paz and then over. You can see the lake to the left of La Paz. That's Lake Titicaca. That's all extension. The main tour itself is just Santa Cruz to Cochabamba, which you can see is a very small portion of the country, but we still have managed to see over 400 species 2 years ago, just with that little slice of Bolivia. So these are the main ecozones, natural regions of Bolivia. You can see a surprisingly large part of Bolivia is the Amazon, and we're not going to do that part. If you go to the right, you go to Chiquitania. We're not going to do that part either, but we will do the Chaco. If you remember, Santa Cruz itself was to the left of Santa Cruz department. It's also very far to the left of the Chaco. So we'll start in the Chaco, which is a kind of a dry forest that is found throughout Paraguay and Argentina, as well as Bolivia. We'll start in the Chaco and Santa Cruz, and then we'll head west into the Yungas, and that'll be our first stop will be Yungas. Then the next stop will be in the Valles Secos, which just means dry valley. And then we'll travel up the Yungas to Cochabamba, stay in the Yungas most of the time. If we go high enough at Cochabamba, we can just sneak into the Altiplano.
Be nice that he kind of did his route.
And then we fly to La Paz, which is in the Altiplano, and then we drive from La Paz to the lake. You can see Lake Titicaca again at the north edge of the Altiplano, and that'll be a lot part of the extension, although I think the extension goes over the top and back into the Yungas as part of the extension. Okay, there's way too much in this slide, so I want you to concentrate on just the small parts. I want to show the tour is designed to gradually help people accumulate experience it with elevation. So we started 830 feet elevation, pretty close to sea level in Santa Cruz. We go through Refugio Los Volcanes, which has a huge variety of elevations. Then on October 10th, we go to Samaipata at a little over a mile high elevation. On October 12th, we go to the red-fronted Macaw Lodge, which is almost the same elevation as Samaipata. On October 14th, we go to Camarapa, a town in Bolivia at 6,000 feet elevation. The next day, we go up and down in elevation almost to 10,000 feet, but we spent the night in Pampa at 7,700 feet elevation. And then Cochabamba is 8,400 feet elevation. And then the next day on the 18th, Tunari National Park goes way, way high. And we're just not sure how high we'll get Tunari National Park. We'll come back to talk about that. And then folks that are just doing that regular part of the tour, 14 days, 13 nights, go back to Santa Cruz, fly home. If you want to join us on the extension, we'll fly to La Paz at 12,000 foot elevation, go to Lake Titicaca at 12,500, and then go to Hotel Puerto Rico, which is over the side of the Andes, and so down to 5,000 feet elevation. And I couldn't find the elevation for Chucamare Reserve, but it's pretty high up, so it'll be one of the highest places that we stay. We return to La Paz, and on October 24th, folks that do the extension will fly back home from La Paz. A few things I want to not forget to say about Bolivia. The bird is exceptional. There are a lot of fabulous countries to go birding in South America. I've been to most of them, but I've only been on one tour where we saw more species than we're going to see in Bolivia. That was in Peru, and we were there quite a long time. But so to see more than 400 species, I've been working for Naturalist Journeys for almost 4 years now, and that's only the second tour where I've seen more than 400 species. And as you saw, we don't cover a huge distance, but we do see a real variety of habitats. And that's partly because there's this large elevation gradient. It's also because of the Andes Mountains kind of creates its own weather and climate. And so we have we go from dry areas to wet areas, from low elevation areas to high elevation areas, and that's how you accumulate a list of 400 species. We already talked about the short route. One of the things that people really enjoy about Bolivia is that it has a large indigenous population, and you have some people living similarly to the ways they lived hundreds of years ago. So you really get a sense of being to an exotic kind of a place. And we do get a chance to interact with people, go shopping, and learn about the history. There's Inca history, and Spanish history, which is very well preserved in Bolivia. And we have a chance to experience some of that. And then the reason I wanted to go in the first place was because there's a strong conservation culture in Bolivia, especially through my friends who work with Asociación Armonía, and the ones who introduced me to Bolivia before I even met Hugo. So October is a wonderful time to be in Bolivia. It's like April here. You just add 6 months or subtract 6 months, and we're in the southern hemisphere, and so it's early spring. So the temperature is warming up in the mountains. If you go in July or August, it can be pretty cold, especially up at La Paz. And it's the last month of the dry season. So if you go in anytime after the 15th of November, the rainy season can be on in full force, and we will miss that on this tour. So there's a group of birds in South America called ovenbirds. They're in the family Bernardiidae, and they're not related to our ovenbird at all, the North American ovenbird. It's a whole family full of birds called ovenbirds. And the most common ovenbird is a bird called Rufous ornero. And this is an ornero. This is an old-fashioned oven still used in places in Bolivia. And the shape of the oven is very similar to the shape of the Rufous ornero's nest. And 2 years ago, we saw Rufous orneros almost every day. We saw their nests on a frequent occasion, and I can assure you that even though the nest is made out of mud, it looks a whole lot like this oven. So the food in Bolivia is different from other places in South America. If you go to Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, or Uruguay, you're eating beef and steak and steak and beef and beef and steak. Bolivia is very different. You can see on the center and the right, we're eating beef, but it's much more marinated than what you see in those other countries. And it's served with a lot of potatoes. So Bolivia is a country with 400 species of potatoes. And we won't get to sample all 400. We get 400 bird species, but we won't get 400 potato species. But you can see in the center that there's French fries underneath the meat and an egg on top. So both the two meals here, the Bolivians love to put egg on top of their dinners. And if you'll see on the rice, there is quite a bit of rice on the right, and then a Bolivian sandwich on the left. So just a few examples of interesting Bolivian food that we experienced. One of the major complaints I get out of Naturalist Journeys is that there's just too much food. And so I'd like to apologize for that in advance. And what makes it worse is the food is really, really good. And so on the left-hand side, that's our whole crew from 2 years ago at Lake Titicaca eating fresh fish that was caught in the lake. And you can see Hugo on the right-hand side here with his hat on backwards, enjoying the fish. And that's me on the left, enjoying my fish. And then on the right-hand side here, Hugo's standing up, and we're eating al fresco at the red-fronted Macaw Lodge. You can see there is a nice cover over, so if we were to have inclement weather, we would be safe, but just beautiful outdoor dining at this one lodge at red-fronted Macaw Lodge. So on the right here is our intrepid photographer, Emily. You can see her camera, so she packs a pretty good camera, and she makes fabulous use of it. And you might think that that animal in the center is a llama, but it is not. It's too small for a llama. It's an alpaca. And you can see the woman on the left is making a hat out of the alpaca fur. And this is a La Paz Lake Titicaca environment. So the alpacas and the wool hats are from where we go on the extension. But I wanted everybody to see Emily. On the left here is a Brazilian woman wearing a traditional, excuse me, Bolivian woman wearing a traditional Bolivian hat. And on the right here, I can't tell you if this is traditional or not, but it sure was interesting to see uh, the witches um, store. And so it has some very different items for sale that I haven't seen in any other country, all under the banner of Bolivian witches. Um, when you meet us, you'll go in some very luxurious vans. We felt very comfortable in this van. All our stuff fit very well. All the people fit very well. The drivers, all the Naturalist Journeys drivers I've had have been wonderful, very easy to travel with. Um, so our first arrival will be in Santa Cruz, as I said, at 830-foot elevation. And one of the first parks we go visit is Lomas de Arena, and it has sand dunes. And so here we go to this landlocked country, and it has acres and acres and acres of sand dunes. And I think I heard the explanation, but I don't remember it. So you have to come on down. So we get the explanation for why there's sand dunes in the middle of um, Santa Cruz department. But wonderful birding here. There are some wetlands in the area, and so we see horned screamers, southern horned screamers in the wetlands. This is a big bird, about the size of a turkey. And they have a yellow-rumped cacique. Caciques are related to orioles and oropendulas and build hanging nests like orioles and oropendulas do. And they're all the caciques have this rich black color, and then with different colors of yellow or red in contrast. This is a female of a blue-crowned matma, excuse me, a blue-crowned trogon. The matma's coming up. So, but this is the trogon. The females tend to be very gray. Both males and females have the reddish belly and the really sharp eye ring. This is a crested oropendula, the most common oropendula in Bolivia. And they have the biggest hanging nest. And notice that this oropendula is in a palm tree, and you can see the palm fruits to the right of the oropendula. After a couple nights in Santa Cruz at this really fancy hotel, kind of a city hotel, we head off to Refugio Los Volcanes. And this is already kind of in the foothills of the Andes. And so there's a huge elevational gradient here. There are a lot of hikes at this place that are on a level, but there's some hikes that involve up and down. And so everybody who comes on this tour should be willing to do some up and down walks. Some are harder than others, and we'll let everybody know in advance. So there's perfectly good things to do if you don't want to take the hardest hikes. But there are a lot of hikes that involve some elevational gain and loss. So Refugio Los Volcanes is important because a bunch of ecoregions all come together at Refugio Los Volcanes. Easy for me to say. So the Yungas is one of the best areas. I should back up a little bit. I don't think I did my full discussion of this part here. Actually, I did pretty well. So Yungas, I'll go back and show you the Yungas. The Yungas is in red there. And we spend almost our entire time in the Yungas, but the first time we get there is at Los Volcanes. So that's why I had to go back and show we're in that really skinny part between the Chaco and the Valles Secos is where we first hit the Yungas at Los Volcanes. We stay in comfortable cabins at this refuge, and the lodge serves really good food and is right on a river, so we can see some riverine species sitting on the porch of the lodge or a short walk from there. This is one of my favorite all-time birds. I love all guans. Again, they're very much like turkeys, but this is the white-throated piping guan, and the piping guans are exquisite. Probably the most exquisite of all the guans. And we saw several of these at Los Volcanes. A plush-crested jay is as beautiful as all jays are. This is the most common one in Bolivia. And on the left, we have an Amazonian motmot, the most common motmot in Bolivia. And on the right, we have a chestnut-eared aracari. And aracaris are slightly smaller versions of toucans. We have a chance to see a couple toucan species here, but the most common bird in the family is this chestnut-eared aracari. So you'll be surprised to learn that the sighting on the right is pretty common. That's an Andean condor. And since we're going to be in the Andes throughout the trip, we'll probably see several Andean condors in the air. And then 2 years ago, we were very lucky to see an Andean condor just sitting on top of a hill. And that's not as common, but was really fun for everybody to see. This is two views of a black and chestnut warbling finch. It's found a day or two later when we go to Samaipata, the town, and then above the town is the Tucumán Parrot Reserve, where we hope to see the Tucumán parrot. But whether we do or not, we'll almost certainly see these black and chestnut warbling finch, which they found out recently is actually kind of tanagers. They should change the name to warbling tanager, but they probably won't. So there's quite a few finches now that have turned out to be tanagers. This is a variable ant shrike, and on my last tour, I went to the Atlantic forest in Brazil, and one of the participants on the tour who should have known better said that when you go to South America, you see a lot of ant thingies. And this ant thingy is an ant shrike. This is a variable ant shrike, but there are ant birds, ant wrens, ant vireos, ant pittas, ant thrushes, some of which are more closely related to each other than others, none of which are related to any bird we have in North America. But there are quite a few of these ant shrikes, and this is the species variable ant shrike. And of course, normally all these ant thingies hide in the vegetation. So to get one out in the open like this takes some hard work, and everybody got a really good view of this bird. So also near Samaipata, we go to El Refugio de Colibríes, and colibríes is one of the Spanish words for hummingbird. And they do have a hummingbird garden here. And surprisingly, with Hugo, we didn't spend a huge amount of time in the hummingbird garden because there's another garden next door that is full of all kinds of other bird species. And the picture on the right was not taken by Emily, as you can tell, because there's a bird in it that you can barely see. And what looks like a knot in a tree is actually a tropical screech owl. And I can't remember which member of our group discovered that that was an owl and not part of the tree, but we all really enjoyed having a chance to see how camouflaged that screech owl is in the knothole of the tree. This is a buff-necked ibis. There's several species of ibis in Bolivia, but this is the one that's most different from the ibises we have here in North America. So after that, we go to the red-fronted macaw lodge, which is a super special place. It is managed by the Armenia Association that I mentioned earlier, and they work with local communities to run the lodge and feed us all and make our stay really welcome. And so you can see that there are a lot of cliffs nearby, and that's actually what the red-fronted macaws like, are the cliffs. And then there's this little village down in the valley, and the red roof area is our lodge, I believe. And so here's a whole bunch of different views of red-fronted macaws. So sometimes when you go to see an endangered species, you're lucky if you see one. When you go to see red-fronted macaws, you're inundated with them because there's this huge flock that lives against the cliffs, and they're just flying in and out all day long, every day, and you get to see them upside down, you get to see them right side up, you get them flying to the right. But it is an endangered species. There are fewer than 800 red-fronted macaws left in the world. At least 80 of them, probably twice as many as that, live here at the red-fronted macaw lodge, and we get to really enjoy all that. And this is them all flying away. Can't even see any red on most of these, but just another view of the huge flock of red-fronted macaws. This is a spot-backed puffbird. It looks huge, but it's actually pretty small. And although it's the red-fronted macaw lodge, there are a bunch of other species that you see there, and spot-backed puffbird is one of several. Notice that this is in some drier vegetation. So by the time you get to the red-fronted macaw lodge, there are cactuses, there's open areas, there's sandy areas. So it's much drier than how we were at Los Volcanes or at Samaipata for that matter. So we're into the dry valleys that were shown on the map by Secos. From there, we drive to Cochabamba, and on the drive, we change elevations dramatically. We'll go up, we'll go down, we'll see cloud forest, we'll see rainforest. And then when we get to Cochabamba, we're in a pretty big city, just like Santa Cruz was, at 8,400 feet elevation. Again, the whole area around Cochabamba, it's in a valley completely surrounded by mountains. And so a lot of elevational diversity, most of which we'll tackle in the van, and some of which we'll hike through, always trying to make it as comfortable as we can for everyone. This hotel, Aranjuez, is really interesting because it's an old house. And it wasn't originally intended to be a hotel, but why they put as many rooms in this house as they did, I'll never know. And the other huge surprise is they have a huge number of staircases. And I never found out where all the staircases went. So if we go back this October, we're gonna have a field trip where everybody tries all the staircases and try to figure out how this hotel is arranged and why they put the stairs where they did. One of the cool things about Cochabamba, we will have seen a lot of beautiful forest, mountainous habitat on the way in, but it's also the gateway to Tunari National Park, which is an area we'll spend at least a full day in. So in Tunari National Park, we will see this black-chested buzzard eagle. And, you know, most eagles and hawks are hard to identify. This bird has such a short tail, it's very easy to identify. And you can't tell when you look up in the sky, but it's a very large bird. And again, we expect to see several of these individuals of this species. And then, again, we were lucky to see this one perched on a rock. So there's enough rocks all around the Andes Mountains that you get to see raptors perched out in the open, not on telephone poles, but on natural rocks, which makes for a much more fun experience. Now, on the top of Cerro Tunari Mountain, they have this grassy habitat that's host to the, in this case, a Andean goose. Now, we can't promise you that you'll get you an Andean goose because it's at very, very high elevation. It takes a lot of time to get there, and we have to see how everybody's dealing with the elevation. So this is an optional bird, but a pretty cool reward if we're able to get to the top of Cerro Tunari. And on the way up of Cerro Tunari, you look back into Cochabamba, and you can see the whole big city of Cochabamba completely surrounded by mountains. So it's a valley city with some very good birding in the mountains nearby. This is one of my favorite birds. Again, it's not quite as big as it looks. It is a white-tipped plant cutter. And it's a Caatinga, which is a really fun South American family that produces all kinds of crazy-looking birds. And this one qualifies. And one of the interesting things about this bird is it has a really strange noise. I don't know if I can imitate it very well, but it's just kind of a squeak, kind of a squeak, squeak. And so we'll hear them before we see them, and everyone will probably learn to understand the screech of a plant cutter before we see one. But one of my all-time favorite weird birds. This is a cream-winged Cyclodes. It looks a lot like a white-winged Cyclodes. And Cyclodes is another group of birds found only in South America, and they're found all through South America, but cream-winged Cyclodes is one you see on Cerro Tunari. This is a blackback grosbeak, a beautiful black and yellow and white species. And this is, I think, one of Emily's best photos taken in a flowering plant. So we all got to enjoy this view that Emily captured for us. And this is a tufted tit spinetail, another group found only in South America and only in the Andes, actually. And a tit's, did I say, tit tyrant. So this is the tufted tit tyrant, and tyrants are flycatchers. So we'll see about 50 species of flycatchers on our tour. Out of the 400 species, about 50 will be flycatchers, but only a couple of them will be tit tyrants. And they have this nice little reverse crest on the top of their head. And there's several other species with that same reverse crest on their head, but this is the one that you see at Tunari National Park. So that's kind of the end of what we do for the regular tour. Folks from Cochabamba will probably go back to Santa Cruz and fly home. And then people that sign up for the extension will fly up to La Paz. They actually fly into the town called El Alto, and then our transportation will take us down to a hotel in the city of La Paz. And there's the woman on the left with a typical Bolivian hat, which I think is more typical up here in what they call the Altiplano or the high Andes. And on the left of the right-hand slide is Lake Titicaca, 12,500 feet. Now, we have chances for this throughout the tour. This is the red-tailed comet, and it is one of the prettiest hummingbirds in Bolivia. We'll see about a dozen species of hummingbirds in Bolivia, and we'll see this species in several different places. And that tail is longer than the bird, which makes it really, really fun. And this particular red-tailed comet was seen at Samania, which is a really fun little park, kind of overlooking La Paz. So you climb up a little bit elevation, we walk through this park, and you get a nice little overview of La Paz while you're birding and finding Bolivian specialty species. This is the rock earth creeper. Earth creeper is another group of birds found only in South America, and kind of looks like a wren, but it's got a longer tail and a longer beak, and not related to wrens at all, but a fun little bird that walks on the ground quite a bit. This is a blue and yellow tanager. Again, this is a bird we should see all through the tour. It's one of the prettiest birds we see, and we'll see about 50 species of tanagers on the tour. So flycatchers and tanagers are the two most common families that we'll see, and we'll see them all through the tour, including this species, blue and yellow tanager. Seems a little orange to me to call it yellow, but I didn't name these birds. I just tell you what they are. And this is the billed saltator, another bird we should see a couple different places on the tour. Saltator is another kind of tanager. It's basically gray-green all over, then with different head markings for the different species. This is one of my all-time favorite birds, and in Bolivia, it is a Lake Titicaca specialist. It's found many other places in South America, but it likes these reeds. So it's a wetland bird in reeds, and Lake Titicaca is one of the few places in Bolivia where the range of this bird overlaps with its habitat. So the many-colored rush tyrant, you can't see all the colors here, but it's just fabulous look. And you have to peek at it through the reeds, but you can see that we had really good luck with it 2 years ago. So everything on Lake Titicaca, at least the part that we visited, is based on reeds. So on the right-hand side, you can see these reed boats. And we had some discussions about what the representing of the boat. We all thought it was dragons. I think they thought they were dogs. But you can see the boat is made of reeds. And then on the left, you see this woman. And behind her, there's all kinds of baskets and other gifts made out of reeds. And I'm not sure what the cloth is made of, not reeds, but I can't remember what the cloth is that she's holding. But again, you'll have many chances in Bolivia to interact with artisans who create products that a lot of people want to take home. And we have fun meeting the people who create these products and sell them to us. Okay, here is an assortment of Lake Titicaca birds. On the upper left is an Andean negrito, which is a kind of flycatcher, which is almost always seen on the ground. There's mostly black with cinnamon wings and back. Then we, on the upper right, we have a Chilean flamingo. Again, Lake Titicaca is a very good place for Chilean flamingo. On the lower right is a mountain caracara. We should also see those in Tunari National Park, so you don't have to go to extension to see that one. You don't have to go to extension if you want to see the bird on the lower left, because that's the flightless Titicaca grebe, which makes Titicaca famous among birdwatchers. So that's kind of an overview of what we plan to do. The bird on the left is a crimson crested woodpecker. The bird on the right is chestnut-fronted macaw. I think these are both more easily seen in Santa Cruz than other places. But you can see that there's just this delightful variety of scenery, people, elevations, habitats, and birds that we'll see in Bolivia. And I hope I've enticed you enough that you want to come join Hugo and I in Bolivia in October. And I had to give you one last look at red-fronted macaws, because Emily took so many great pictures of them. Okay, I'm open for questions, conversations. Hugo, feel free to jump in with something I misstated or overlooked.
Thanks.
And Julie, will you read the questions for me?
Yeah, I will. Thank you so much, Greg. That was an incredible presentation. The photography was so good. The
Isn't
birds,
Emily good?
they just look incredible. My gosh.
And
So,
we didn't always get views that good, but a lot of times we did.
they're incredible.
Yeah.
So we have a few questions coming in. Anybody, if you have a question, you can go ahead and pop it into the chat box on the other side or on the right-hand side. The first question, Vernie asked, and Hugo answered a bit, but I'll read it for everyone. Do any of the lodges have feeders for photo opportunities? And Hugo replied, the places with feeders are the Hummingbird Garden, Red-Fronted Macaw Lodge, and the Jukumari Lodge. And maybe either Greg or Hugo could expand on that.
For Hugo.
Sure. Thank you. And hello, everybody. Hello, Greg. It's nice to see you again since a long time ago.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to have you here soon again. And I hope you guys, everybody can come. Well, one of the things that we are still developing in Bolivia is this issue, feeders. Like birding is something new in Bolivia. We don't have many feeders along all over the country. This is something that is starting, and we try to visit all the places with feeders that we have en route. The first one that is very close to Samaipata town is the Hummingbird Garden with around 15 species of hummingbirds, not all year round. Of course, I'm not promising that number of hummingbirds, but it's a decent number and very nice species of hummingbirds and some other birds as well, like seed eaters or saltators or jays and well, some other things. It's a small garden actually, but with a lot of wild flowers that were brought from the wild to the garden that were very successful. Then the other one is at the red-fronted macaw lodge. This is not a serious feeder actually. They put some seeds and some fruits just when people arrive there for birding, but then the rest of the year they don't put it. So that's why I'm not, I say that it's not like a serious feeder. So we don't have too many species, but we do have them very close. So that's why we have good opportunities for white-fronted woodpeckers, for sayaka tanagers, for blue and yellow tanagers, and well, some other colorful birds. And the other one is Jukumari Lodge. That this is a new running lodge that actually we didn't go with Greg on the last tour because it was not running yet in those in that year. So I love this place because they work very good on the feeders, and they were able to attract one very special ant bird. Well, in this
Ah,
case, an Anteater, the rufous face Anteater, and another and one endemic bird like the Bolivian brush finch, too, and several other ones. So this is a place with very good feeders, and they just started like 1 year ago with feeders. So in the future, we will have more species on this one.
so those would both be live birds for me, Hugo.
Yes, yes, that's right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, comparing with other places for sure.
Great. So, Julie, more questions?
Yes. Vernie would like to know also how many species did you see the last time?
So I think it was 430 species. And
That's
as I mentioned before, there's only one other tour I've taken ever in my lifetime where I saw more species than that on a tour, and that was in Peru, which is close by. And, I've done two tours in Brazil over the last 8 months, and we're happy to get 250 species in a diverse country like Brazil. But in Bolivia, because the elevations are so close, we get to visit so many different elevations. We visit dry areas and wet areas and low areas and high areas that the species list accumulates amazingly well in Bolivia compared to other tours I've been on.
Thank you. Tina would like to know how cold it gets on the tour at the higher elevations.
Hugo, you better answer that because that last place is the highest one.
Yes, yes, I was. I responded it that it could be around like 45 to 50 Fahrenheit degrees around, I would say. Especially for the ones who go to the La Paz extension. We have one early morning on the Altiplano, on the Puna. So that morning will be the coldest. And in where we have at 4,700 meters above the sea level. Maybe Greg can help me to convert that in feet. What would be around
I just multiply.
4,000?
I just multiply by three, Hugo.
Yeah, 400 or 14,000 feet around. So that's the highest point where we can go birding depending how people feels, but the main ecosystem for that day actually is the yungas in lower elevations. But anyway, there are some important birds at the Puna, at the humid Puna, that we can consider birding there before going to the yungas. And also in Tunari National Park, when we go before La Paz extension, we go to a high elevation. But well, I was thinking in that day we can go just until around 9,000 feet, 9,500 feet, and then go back to the city. We could go much higher until 13,000 feet, 14,000 feet to look for other species, but that wasn't considered for the altitude. But anyway, that depends how we plan. We can always change some little plans during the trip according to preferences of everybody. So, but I would say that we are not going to have temperatures lower than 40 Fahrenheit, considering that it's October and is October and November are the warmest months during the year.
Of course, the only hot place we're going to be is in Santa Cruz. And so, because the entire tour will be in the mountains, it's one of those layering trips where you're going to want extra layers early in the morning or on an afternoon if we're going really high. And then you'll take those layers off in the middle of the day. We're at lower elevations. So it'll be a real fun one for taking on and taking off clothes.
That's right, but don't think that all the time we will be in hot and cold places. The yungas
Right.
usually are warm, if it's not raining. Um, October usually is a dry month, but anyway, you should bring a rain jacket just in case, right?
Julie, what you got for us?
Bernie would also like to know if there are many long drives.
So there are some medium length drives, but nothing super long. Is there a 4 hour drive, Hugo? Do you think on this tour is the longest?
One of the days we will have a 5.5 hours drive. The day when we drive from Comarapa, that is in Santa Cruz department, when we move to Coranipam. The first night we spent in Cochabamba department. I changed this on the itinerary for this year to don't go until Cochabamba and go back to the Yungas again because it would be longer next day. But we are sacrificing like 1 hour more driving the day before instead to drive like 3 hours the day we do the Cochabamba area in the Yungas. So for this reason, it's around 5.5 hours, the longest drive, 5 to 5.5.
And that's pretty unusual. And all the drives we took 2 years ago, there are always good birding stops on the way. So it's not like we're sitting the whole time because there's
That's right.
always a good place to stop and see birds.
Okay. The next question is there any supplemental oxygen available or needed at the higher elevations?
I guess my answer to that would be they need to consult with their doctor because we can tell people what the elevations are, and they have to have some experience or a way to talk to their doctor about how, because everybody's response to elevation is completely different. And it doesn't matter how physically fit you are, it doesn't usually matter how old you are, it's just different bodies adjust differently to elevation. And that's why we've designed this trip to gradually increase elevation so that bodies really do adjust elevation with time. And by going to Cochabamba, after we've already been at a mile high elevation before we get there, that elevation should be easier to adjust to. And then people that go on the extension should have an easier time adjusting to La Paz. But I really think that's a consultation with the doctor. We can tell you exactly how high we'll be and how long we'll be there. And then you can ask your doctor what you might need to adjust to that.
Thank you,
Uh,
Craig.
but if I can say something else, please, we are going to
Please.
have in the cars bottles of oxygen for anyone who needs it.
Cool.
That's great to know, but still consult with your doctor.
Yes, of course.
The next question is from John, and he wants to know if you need a yellow fever vaccine for Bolivia, and I can tell you that you do. They would like to see the certification, the yellow card. So if there, I know that occasionally people have doctors who will tell them they should not get a yellow fever vaccine. And if you are in that situation, you could talk with us first and we can tell you if Bolivia will accept a doctor's note or something like that. But yes, generally you have to have yellow fever for Bolivia.
That's right.
And again, we're going to spend most of our time at elevation. So a lot of the tropical diseases that people worry about are very rare at elevation.
The next question is, do you visit any of the Reed Islands on Lake Titicaca? That's from Libby.
So we do take a boat trip on Lake Titicaca. Hugo, do you know if that boat goes to Reed Islands?
And no, it doesn't, because Reed Islands actually are in the Peruvian side.
Hmm.
And there are very small reed islands in the Bolivian side, but are not real reed islands, are something made for tourism. But we stay especially close to the border, do this boat trip to find the Titicaca Grip and other species of the lake, but we don't visit any island.
Okay, the next question is from Gail, and she wants to know the average group size for this trip. Gail, we won't take more than 10 clients on this tour. I'm just double checking that it's not smaller than that. Yes, we won't take more than 10.
And so we should all fit into one vehicle.
Yeah. That's it for our questions. If anybody has any last minute questions, oh, here's one. We can pop them in right now. Um, Gina says, in the past, I've heard that you should have a booster for yellow fever after 10 years. I also heard that it is now that they consider it for life. Do you know what the requirement is? Gina, I'm not sure. That's again something you'd need to talk with your doctor about, and you should check the CDC website or even the Canadian equivalent of CDC. They're updating a lot. But we wouldn't claim to be doctors, so we want to make sure that you're checking with your doctor and checking the CDC sites yourself.
So
Okay.
again, I should say 2 years ago we had very few mosquitoes, so we really didn't have insect problems at all that I recall. Um, so that hasn't been a big worry for me in Bolivia at all.
Okay. Gina would also like to know what kind of mammals we see.
So it's not the world's greatest mammal trip. We do expect to see at least one marmoset and one capuchin monkey, but probably just those two species of monkeys. They have squirrels in Santa Cruz. They have capybaras, which is the world's largest rodent. And then a few other odds and ends. What else, Hugo?
It's possible to find sloths on the brown-throated tree-toed sloth at the botanical garden, for example. That actually, Greg, that's a part of the Chiquitania forest. So we are going to visit a
Yes.
little bit of the Chiquitania. But most mammals, like lower elevations. So like we are going to do is just the first day at lower elevations, then we go higher and higher eventually, gradually. So those would be the main ones. In the mountains, we had the chance to see the vizcachas, for example. That is a big rabbit. I don't know if you remember, Greg. It's
I
these
do.
very,
I do.
very big rabbits. Vizcachas are called. And mountain guinea pigs also at the valleys, interradiant dry valleys, or in higher elevations on the high plains as well. But then not not much more than that. Maybe howler monkeys at the botanical garden too. But the first day especially will be for mammals. But then the rest of the trip, just uh, very few. Maybe if we do a night walk, we can find some small mammals like I don't know, like rodents or like armadillos. Let's see.
Forgot to mention that by the airport at Santa Cruz, we usually see greater rheas. And so they're not mammals, but they're terrestrial birds. And it's really cool to be able to drive up to a group of greater rheas at the Santa Cruz airport.
Okay. Well, if that's it for questions, we would love to thank you for joining us. And thank you, Greg and Hugo, for a really great presentation. This has been fun.
I hope you all can come. I think you would really enjoy it. And Hugo and I will give our best effort to make a good time for everybody.
Thank you. And if you have questions or would like to book the trip, you can email our sales team at travel@naturalistjourneys.com, or you can call us at 866-900-1146. I've put that email address and that phone number in the chat here at the end. And we would love to have you. Thank you so much.
Everybody, Hugo, hope to see you in October.
I hope to see you everybody, guys. So you are very welcome to Bolivia anytime you want to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you.